My name is PatCapponi. I'm a lead facilitator at Voices from the Street. I've been an activist in mental health and poverty for 30 years or so. And I've written 5 books of nonfiction and 2 mysteries set in a psychiatric kind of boarding home where I was sent. But at the moment, I'm working with groups here. We started out with women primarily with psychiatric issues. We added people with addictions, and over time we've added single welfare moms, second-generation welfare moms, people with physical disabilities, because in this kind of work, people are in silos. So it's really easy to blame yourself or blame whatever label you're carrying for your circumstances. The reality is, though, that when you lower those silo walls, when people hear each other, you can start to really very clearly see systemic issues across the board. And it also makes people more aware of how they can get out of a box, how they can, so I find it really useful to develop perspective in people, and also a huge sense of a broader community out there that will help people feel better about who they are. People will live up to whatever, or live down to whatever is expected. So we're very clear during the interview process that if you're accepted, there's no saying, I can't do that, I won't do that, it's too hard. No, if you're in this, the world is hard. So this is about strengthening yourself and your ability to communicate and your ability to fight for change. I take them through the responsibilities of leadership and how you can't be a leader unless there's people willing to follow you. So you have to have something to offer people. It can't be about personal grievance. It has to be, you have to understand your own community and to understand that things that you may endorse sitting on a board, others of your community have to live with for years after. And I talk about mistakes I made when I was at the beginning of the Supportive Housing Coalition, which has lots of group homes. But I didn't know enough to make sure that tenants' rights were like first and foremost, and let myself be put off. And people, like some are good, but there's a lot of not good things happening there. So we have to understand that it's not just, it's not about fun, it's about real stuff, and people will live with the consequences of our decisions. So if I think something doesn't work for me, then I don't just say, we don't want that, because it's a broad community and there's people that may want that. So for instance, if I don't want shock treatment, I have to respect the right of someone to say they do. We have to supply information, but leave the choices to others. And we talk about, when you're becoming a leader, when you're representing people, there's things that you have to do, which, you don't have meltdowns. You don't rant at people. How do people learn? We ask, how do you learn? Do you learn when someone's wagging a finger in your face, or do you learn by stories, by example? The responsibility to learn as much as you can from others in your communities, to broaden your perspective all the time, to keep pushing that box so that you can see more clearly. To stay up on current events, the news is depressing, but you've got to have a sense of what's going on in the bigger world. When we start speaking to people about boards, it's, there's the usual stuff, you can't order around staff. You can't, you've got to be smart in how you get on a board. You don't, during the interview, you don't say, I'm going to change everything about this place. You build how to build allies, how to affect policy, all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of it's taking people who've been powerless and saying it's not just about you, it's not about grievance, it's about change, and how do you make change in the shelter system or the hospital or your housing? Well, you start by, as I said, educating yourself, making allies wherever you can. Everyone you meet is a potential ally, not making unnecessary enemies, keeping confidences, and learning all the way. I tell the guys, you know, sit near the chair, because it's a power thing, but also make sure you keep listening and that you'll be heard. You gotta just listen for a while till you catch it, but don't wait too long because silence becomes a habit, right? Some of the things you may hear may offend you, how people talk about clients, so you have to have a strategy to correct people without kicking their head in. And sometimes that's very annoying, but we find as consumer survivors, like I work with the cops, right? So there's lots of time when I'm just, but I'll go outside and I'll talk to other survivors and we can and then go back in and smile and get back to the job. So you need to be able to vent, but not in the meeting. And so you depend on others. I also suggest that once you're on a board, you start pushing to get more of us on the board, because they can always dismiss you and say it's just you that thinks this way, but if there's a group of people, then it's not. And also maybe even have a group around you who can help you to put forward stuff, so that you have a reference group that you can use. But that the shelter has to be prepared to sponsor that, because people's houses aren't big enough to do that. Sometimes I wish people would have to wear their salaries, just, you know, I make, because it's too easy to feel like you're a charitable person, and it's, when you get paid, there's nothing charitable about it. It's very different volunteering from poverty than it is volunteering from the middle class. So you don't want to force people to spend out of their meager checks $6 to get to and from a meeting, and you want to recognize the hardship that they're living in. So for me, that anybody with lived experience should get at least tokens and $20 and a meal, because the fact that they're clients isn't an excuse to kind of use them. So to be able to participate, like we give our guys $60 a week for the 12 weeks that we have them. And the reason we do that is people always say poor people don't have the energy or the time because they're too busy scrambling. So rather than isolate them and say you can't, sorry, you're too poor to participate, take away for the time that they're with you, take away that sense of, oh my God, what do I got when I go home? So by feeding people, by making sure that they can have the transit, and by you know, $20, which will make a heck of a difference in someone's life. So then people will say, we can't afford the $20. Well, you're getting a salary. If you know, the staff should be sticking that money in an envelope. You know, if you value the people, then you know, you should be valuing. Ask yourself, what would you do if you were in that situation? You know that the people on the board are coming from safe places and driving, no doubt, in cars and things like that, and it's disrespectful not to recognize the difference. First, you need to work with the staff, right, to ensure that the women who do end up on their boards are treated with respect. So like a sensitization that may take a couple of hours with the staff about, because if you just send in people cold, they're not going to stay. If it's one or two people you're looking for in a token effort, that's not going to work. If you don't provide mentors for people, If you assume everybody has a computer and a printer to run off all the minutes to understand the background, that's not going to work. So you really have to bring people in a non-threatening way, and you know, say, well, this shelter's been around for this, and this is who funds us, and this is who gets hired, and you know, give background. You know, I've met people who say, we need special training to work with survivors. No, you don't. You know, you really, really don't. If you're going to ghettoize people, that's really bad. So you don't need special training. You need an understanding of the kind of world people are living in. And being dirt poor is rougher than being mentally ill. We're coming out of a system that infantilized people, and again, when you have low expectations, people will live down to that. You know, you can check out almost any drop-in where, oh, they can't help it, they're crazy. No, no, no. If you expect better, people will be better. If you treat them like children, they're going to act like children. There's the, I don't know, I call it executive director disease, which is very self-protective, keep people away, don't let them think for themselves. You know, there's also an attempt to co-opt people to make them a public face, as long as they're towing the party line. That's got to stop. For our folks, it's teaching them to be gradual about what they're asking for, to ensure other board members understand the reality that people face, that it's always hard to be on the end of charitable endeavors. It stings, and there's no choice really when it's charity. You take what you're given, and, you know, thank you, ma'am, kind of. So all that plays a part. We have to stop being treated like a separate species. That, you know, the remarkable thing about our community is the degree of empathy and the degree of caring, and that still survives after some incredible stuff. So I don't have much patience with workers who talk about being burnt out, or, you know, if you're burnt out, move on. These are people's lives that we're talking about, and rules were set up before we found our voice. The way things are done, even the kinds of people that are hired, all those things should be on the table, right? And start new. And some other people say things like, oh, you can't hire, we tried that, you know, hiring people with lived experience, it was a disaster. Yeah, because you were doing the hiring and looking for women who think like you do and talk like you do, but those folks are likely not representative of their community, so I think that a new kind of hiring has to be there. Meetings don't have to be run the way they're run. I think that's really sad. The way they're run, they're boring, things are always decided beforehand. There's, you know, so to have really good discussions, but also to have social time is really important, to get to know each other, you know, just so that someone's not always feeling on the outside. You have to really know why it's important. You know, if you want to do a good job, and we all do, you can't do it by acting on people. I think some of the biggest failures that we've seen system-wide is because we've stopped, well, we don't listen. So when you take away someone's personal sense of power, when they can't be actors in their own lives, it may make the worker feel good. It doesn't make the client feel good. So until you're actually making decisions that affect you and affect your community, you feel that powerlessness just continues and continues and continues. I've seen instances where as long as you're agreeing with the ED, life is good. And as soon as it's like, oh, how could you do that? How could you not support? which is a terrible thing to do to someone new who's sitting down trying to do things. So that kind of stuff has to stop. I think plain language, explaining all those initials that everybody throws in everywhere, and the assumption that everybody knows how things work. Well, they don't. A lot of people walk into an agency and it seems like that agency's been there forever, and would do quite nicely without any input from anybody else, right? So to walk a mile in our shoes, I think, becomes really, really important. Some people are proud of their shelters, but you know, we were proud downstairs and in the drop-in serving good Christmas dinners, but people still had to line up. And yeah, it feels good to give charity, but it doesn't always feel good to get charity. I'm not sure why, but if you go through the things that many of our guys have gone through, and you come out empathetic, and you come out wanting to change things and still a fighter in a constructive way, that's your MA, your PhD, you know, and to work hand in hand with people who only have the academic experience or credentials, that would bring, I think that would really help shelters be more compassionate, be more real, re-examine some of the things like, are women allowed to stay in during the day? All these kinds of issues, you know, that come up, yeah. We bring to the fore, I think, all the practical issues that haunt people that it's too easy to forget about. And we know things like how hard it is to ask for something, so that if a worker is approached, and you know, for the worker it may be the 50th person that day coming to them, but for the client it's the first time they've dared to ask, and if they get blown off or criticized or you know, you've kind of wrecked that person's ability to ask again. That may last for months, you know. So all those things we can bring, I think, to the forefront.